Hello everyone. In this presentation, I will demonstrate how to use the Objects Manager to manage the customized objects in NAB. Before we begin, let's address an important question. Why would you want to use this application when Microsoft stopped supporting their Seaside development environment? Simply put it, if you still need to maintain your existing customizations or are in the process of upgrading to Dynamics BC, then this application is for you. As a matter of fact, the project and collaboration features may prove to be useful beyond the years. Nevertheless, the choice was made to license this application as a perpetual, pay-once license where you can choose to upgrade only when it's worth it. All licenses will come with free upgrades within the first year. The time and money this application can save you is much more than the cost of owning it. But you must hurry because this may change to a monthly or annual plan in the future. We will start by creating a new database to store the NAB objects. You can think of this as your source-safe database. Each database will require you to create one administrative user account. Now we will need to set up our environment databases. In a typical setup, there should be three environments: a development, a test, and a live. Smaller companies may choose to develop and test in the same environment. Thus, the TestDB is optional. This application can query each database directly to obtain the latest information about the state of each object. This will give you the most accurate state of your objects. However, it's understandable that the database isn't always accessible. Therefore, the authentication setting is optional. Without the authentication settings, you will need to check the refresh grid from imported objects only. This means that you must export your objects code and import them regularly to get up-to-date information on the state of your databases. Normally, this should just be the development database, for you should not be modifying codes directly in your test or live environments. Every time you set up a new database, it will start out with a free limited user license. To activate a trial license, just register for an account and log in. After the trial period, the trial license will revert to free. To activate a professional or enterprise license, once you've paid for the license, just sign in again to activate that license. Now we will add users. The administrative user is created each time you create a new database. It is the only account that can add and delete users. There are three different roles. Collaborator tester role can only view the objects and projects. They would not be able to transfer any of the objects. You can add as many of these users as you need, and it would not count toward your license. The developer consultant role can do pretty much everything but assign tasks to other users, while the manager role can do everything. There are several ways to filter the list of objects. The primary method is the show and type. Modified will list all objects that have the modified flag checked, regardless of the environment. The date mismatch will list objects with mismatched dates in any of the three environments. I primarily use this option the most because it is the quickest and easiest way to see what's under development or is ready to test. As a developer, if you can do your development and testing within the development environment and moving it to test only when ready for other users to test, this will give you and your manager greater visibility into what needs to be worked on and what is pending test. This is oftentimes where the ball gets dropped, as testers are waiting for the developers to finish, while developers are waiting for the testers to test. Thus, the project is stuck and time is wasted. Size mismatch is similar to the date mismatch option, but will instead compare against the size of each object. The reason for this filter is because the object can be modified as a text object, then outside of the development environment, and then imported. This is oftentimes notorious for not updating the object's modified date and time. Obviously, when using the date mismatch option, the application will mistake this. This option will not be available when refreshing from imported objects only. Developing is also similar to the date mismatch option. However, it will only compare the dates between the development and live environment. Sometimes, while debugging or testing a scenario, we may choose to work directly in the test environment only, so as not to affect the development objects. This will help differentiate that. Testing will list objects with a matching date between the development and testing environment, but not the live. Type is self-explanatory, so we will skip that. Now let us look at the context menu. Most of these items are also self-explanatory, so I'll just skip to the important ones. The import object codes will open a window for you to import objects from your 3 different environments. This is important if you chose the refresh from imported objects only option. If checked, the application is limited to objects that have been imported only, which means until you've imported some objects, there will not be anything to list. The Create NAB filter for import is there to help you maintain this. It will keep track of the last import and does nothing more than create a filter which you must copy to the clipboard to use as a date filter for all objects modified since the last import. The Create NAB filter from list is also an important feature for helping you to filter your NAB development environment to objects that are currently listed. It may take a bit of manual work, but we are limited to the features that are provided. Where used and Show Advanced Find are 2 powerful features. Where used will filter the list to where the selected objects are referenced. Show Advanced Find, on the other hand, will give you the ability to search for everything in the object's codes and list them only when a match is found. I often use this to find where an external function of an object or a field may be referenced. When used in conjunction with the where used, it can help you quickly find where the external function of a particular object may be referenced. I will show this in more detail near the end of this presentation. Now let's look at some real transfers. In this first example, I'm merely showing you what happens if you do a transfer without first importing the object's codes. As you can see, the application doesn't find and doesn't have anything to show. For sake of simplicity, I'm going to turn on the automatic export-import feature. Please note that this feature can only be used if the environment you're exporting the objects from have the Solution Developer License option. This application gives you 2 ways to communicate. One way is through the public node, which is the more visible method, but not feasible when you have overlapping developments. It doesn't have the ability to keep track of conversations either. When the object is transferred to the live environment, this node will be logged and transferred along with the transfer history, which will also clear it out. The alternative is through the Project Collaboration tab, where conversations can be tracked and are separated by project. The private node is visible only to the user that's logged in. They can use this to jot down some quick notes about the object, such as something to look at or what needs to be done. It does not get transferred and is never cleared, except by the user. Each time you transfer an object, as you can see here, you can easily tell what changes were made. As a developer, you can quickly skim through to see if you had forgotten to document a change or if there were some overlapping changes made by another developer working on the same object. I, myself, thanks to this application, was able to catch a few of those prior to transferring my changes to the live environment. Several times, it also helped prevent accidentally overwriting changes that another developer had made directly to the live environment. Even if it wasn't caught, this application keeps a copy of the live environment's object on every transfer, Therefore, you can easily restore it to retrieve any loss of work. What we have here is the transfer history window. Each time you transfer an object to the live environment, a copy of the live environment's object in a font format and a text if it had been imported are kept for future comparison. If needed, you can extract and reload the FOB or restore it directly to the live environment with the Upload to Live button. The public notes and the documentation of changes can also be found here. As you can see here, the private note remains while the public note is cleared. Now let us look at the projects. Adding a project is pretty quick and simple. If the object isn't already associated with a project, you can just start by clicking on the Edit button for a project. Assign team members to your project, which are your developers and consultants. You can also assign collaborators, but that isn't really necessary unless you want to keep them in the loop. Anyone can view the project, and if they were to add a comment to the Collaboration tab, they will automatically be added to this list. The Attachments tab is for attaching anything related to the project. The Time Tracking tab, as the name implies, is for tracking time on each object. This is to help estimate future developments and for billings if needed. Managers can assign tasks to team members, or team members can add tasks for themselves to serve as reminders to do something. The Objects tab will list all objects associated with the project. After the project has been created, it is automatically associated with the selected object. You can associate other objects to the project simply by choosing it from the drop-down. As you can see here, time can be tracked for each object that's tied to the project, which can be helpful for the managers to estimate future developments. Managers can assign tasks to different users, or users can assign tasks to themselves to serve as reminders to do something. Now I will add another test project and associate a few objects to show you how the project filter can work to your advantage. When you filter by project, you can quickly see all the related objects, which can be helpful to the managers, other users, and even yourself when transferring your developments to the test or live environments. When creating a new database, there are obviously no codes loaded yet, so we will need to load some. It is recommended that you export all objects from all environments to text and import them so the application can have something to work with. Here, I'm just going to import from a pre-existing export into the development environment to show you how long it may take. In this example, it took around 6 minutes to import about 6,000 objects. Now we will need to do our first transfer. You can either select an object and click on the transfer button, or just double click the object. For this object, I intentionally made the test environment's code newer than the developments so that you can see what will happen. The application will warn you when it detects that the development environment's code are older than that of the selected environment. Although it's not recommended, sometimes it's quicker and more efficient to make a quick change on the live or test environment. In case you made some quick change and forgotten about it, This aims to protect you from accidentally overriding that quick change. This application relies on a popular text comparison engine, but is still not perfect. Sometimes what shows as deleted or added is not necessarily true, but there's no engine out there that can do a perfect comparison. It does do a very good job 95% of the time though. Normally, the live environment is the last environment to transfer the development object to. When all three environments have a matching date and time, the object will automatically disappear when filtering by date mismatched. Since we transfer to the live environment only, this is why page 50 is still visible here. Let's say you are the administrator and want the on-hold drop-down that's on page 50 to be added to other pages that reference the same field. You can either jot that down into the public note where any user can see, or you can create a project for it and put the note there. When you enter the public note field, the application will automatically switch to data entry mode. When the field loses focus, the values will be immediately updated. You can use Ctrl Z to undo your changes, but once you leave the field, the change is permanent. Now I'm going to add a project as well, so you can see the advantage it has over the public notes. Because the object is tied to a project, we cannot use the project edit button to start a new project. Therefore, we will need to click on the project browser button. From here, we can then add a new project. Now let's log in as Tony. When Tony logs in, because he's part of a project that has new collaboration comments he has not yet read, a comment button will appear. When Tony clicks on the comment button, the application will filter to the projects that have comments that he has not read yet. When an object has only one project associated, the edit button will open the project directly. When more than one project is associated, this button will become a drop-down button instead, where you must choose which project to open. This application uses the messaging platform for collaboration, which helps to keep the conversation tidy, with less duplication. Each time anyone adds anything, it will be added to the collaboration like a group message. If you rely on emails to collaborate, you know how easily a conversation can get lost, especially when there are multiple people and you get overlapping responses. Not only that, but reading and searching through the messages can also be a huge waste of time. Now let's see how Tony will know which page to add the drop-down to. First, he must open the advanced find window. I'm just going to do a search for everything that contains the word on hold, which is the field the drop-down controller on page 50 is tied to. This is just to show you how the search can return too many results and how to narrow that search. As you can see, there are perhaps hundreds of objects containing the word on hold, which is too many. Knowing that the field is from the purchase header, table 38, Tony can narrow the result by first performing a where used. From there, he can do a search within the where used results to return just the relevant pages. Now Tony just needs to check the pages to ensure the source table is table 38, and then associate them with the add-in project. Although it isn't necessary, I'm just going to include the table 38 to show the relations. Now that all the relevant objects have been added to the project, Tony and everyone else can easily filter by the project to see the objects that are related and may be affected by the project. By this token, when the project edit button is a drop-down, it can serve as an indicator that the object may have overlapping developments. Using the Create Nav filter from list, Tony can now rely on the filters created to narrow the list in the nav development environment that he will need to focus on. All this really does is create clipboard values that you must then use to narrow the list of objects in the nav development environment by object ID. Since we are filtering by the object ID only, we must break them into different type of objects to filter. In addition, the filter can only have so many characters. Therefore, when there are too many objects, the application will break them out into different sets. As an added bonus to this presentation, I'm going to show you how to be more efficient. As you can see here, Tony must add the add-in to 4 other pages, which is simple enough. Tony can just easily copy the init drop-down function and paste it on every page, but he's not going to do that. Instead, he's going to consolidate that into a reusable code unit, which is something that was pre-made for this presentation. Now he will add a new function by the same name to page 49 and reference the code unit to populate it. In case you are unaware, although nav will let you reference the on-hold field with a space in it, at compile time, it will complain and make it appear as though you can't pass the reference this way, but it's really because of the naming convention. Now we've just narrowed it down to 2 lines of code for the init dropdown. That may not seem like much, but when you have 10 different options, that will be. Not only that, but imagine having to update this list in the future. Instead of having to go through 5 different pages to make the change, you can just go to the code unit to make one quick change. Assuming that all changes have been made and that we're ready to transfer our development to the test environment, we can either transfer one object at a time, or this is where the batch transfer can come in handy. Instead of transferring one object at a time, we're going to transfer all 5 objects in a single swoop. In the batch transfer window, Tony can easily check each object to ensure only the changes that he's made are being transferred. Looks like Tony forgot to include the new code unit that was imported earlier. Imagine he wasn't aware and this was transferred to the live environment. This can easily cause some downtime, as users would not be able to open the affected pages and must report the issue to Tony. By the time Tony gets wind of the issue, he must then try and figure out the culprit, which is a simple mistake. All this can easily waste 15 to 30 minutes. To help eliminate such mistakes, the application will recompile the objects upon every transfer. When an error occurs, it will allow you to easily revert your change while you investigate and apply a fix. And that is it. That's how quick and simple it is when using the Objects Manager to transfer your developed objects to the test and live environments. Thank you for watching the presentation. I hope you find this application as useful to you as it has been to me.